Hi, and this is Jamjar 34 for another episode of Age of Sigmar, and it's number 11. Yes, this is my Warhammer Sunday, and this week I will be hoping to do a bit more on the video side this week. I've been a bit behind with stuff, and yes, I'm going to crack onto it. Just take that out of focus. So yes, Age of Sigmar, massive big shout out to everyone who has subscribed to my channel, and also all the relevant groups that I'm involved in. Cat Curlander, Warboss Tay, Get It Painted, and everyone I know on YouTube. Ding, big respect. I haven't sorted out any questions and comments, but there were a few, and I had some good ones. But there you go. I haven't had time to be honest. I've had a busy weekend. I've had a good weekend. My mate's 40th, whatnot, and yes, just spending some time out the hobby as you do on the weekend sometimes, and just enjoying it. So, what am I doing today? Well, back on this little beauty again. Do a bit more washes and whatnot, and yeah, cracking on with that. So come and join me, 30 minutes roughly of listening to me ramble and a bit of some audio play as well. So yeah, starting off with that. I'm doing the other side now, so it's getting on a bit. So I'll sort out my DVD player and crack on with that while you carry on painting and listening to me ramble. So yeah, this is another Warhammer Sunday, and it's my Warhammer Sunday. So yeah, so this is track number 3 onwards from the last video, and there's eight tracks. So if you just bear with me 1 minute. Yeah, so have a good listen, have a paint, do what we usually do.
Darcer signalled for his retinues to fall into a proper marching order. The stormcasts swung fluidly into position with an ease born of centuries of training. Liberators moved to the fore and flanks, encircling the judicators, while the prosecutors swooped overhead. The retinues of the winged warriors would range ahead of the host as it marched, keeping a keen eye out for any more would-be ambushers. Not that such a tactic had succeeded yet, nor would it if Tarsus had anything to say about it. Had he been anything other than a stormcast eternal, he might have taken the continued attacks for an omen. But fear had been burned out of him long ago, and left only faith in its wake. He and his warriors were heroes, their valor proven in battles all but forgotten in the haze of their reforging. The hallowed knights had been the 4th storm host to be founded, the ranks of their warrior chambers filled with the faithful of the mortal realms. Their only commonality was that each had called upon Sigmar's name in battle and been heard, and that each had shed his mortal flesh in the name of a righteous cause. Tarsus could but dimly recall the days of his own mortality. He remembered the weight of his sword and armor, and the rustle of a war cloak of deepest purple. He remembered screaming himself hoarse on the stone battlements of a burning citadel as red, lean-limbed demons scrambled up the walls and across the causeways towards him and those he led. He remembered a name, Tarsem, and a word, Hellstone, and the moment a monstrous shadow had fallen across him. The air had writhed beneath the beat of great wings. Then a roar. And nothing. Nothing. Until he had awoken in Sigmar, forged anew. That was the way of it. And Tarsus was glad. His enemies had not changed, but now he had the power to meet them and break them. He was Stormcast, and they would learn to fear that name before the end. His reverie was soon broken by Ramus.
This is a fell place.
Parts of it, yes. Tarsus thought of the things they'd seen since arriving. Strange hourglass-shaped mountains that rose along the far horizon, and clumps of pale flowers that softly sighed when one walked past them.
A land of endings and silent decay. This is a place of whispers, where forgotten ghosts wander roads and paths that lead nowhere. A place where mountains crumble, only to be raised anew with the sun, and birds and beasts are born and die in the same day. All is in decline here, though I know not whether it is the doing of our foes, or the dread master of this realm.
The Lord Redictor looked at Tarsus.
I do not know. Nagash betrayed Sigmar once. Mayhap he will do so again. But that is not for us to worry over. Our concern is to gain audience with him and make common cause, so that we might begin to wrest this realm from the enemy.
But first, we have to find him in this wilderness.
Aye, and we will do so, even if we must fight our way across this land to do it.
They had been searching for a way into the underworld since their arrival. One of the legendary 9 gates into the underworld of Styx. The great necromancer had vanished, disappeared to the depths where none could find him. But Sigmar had set his scribes the centuries-long task of scouring the ancient records compiled long before the All-Points War for any hint of where the 9 gates might be. That knowledge had been passed on to the Stormcasts charged with seeking out Nagash. The 9 gates had been housed in 9 citadels, some massive and well defended, and others so small as to be forever hidden from the eyes of the enemy. 9 warrior chambers had been dispatched to find these structures and the gates secreted within their walls. So far, the gates had proved elusive, but Tarsus had hope. Sigmar would not have sent them to this place were victory not achievable. The gate was within reach, somewhere, and they would find it. The trail grew rougher and steeper as the Stormcasts marched on, leaving the detritus of battle far behind them, winding through verdant fields that withered in the moonlight, only to flourish anew as the sun rose, and trees that shuddered and sighed in the slightest of breezes. The sky overhead was pale and dim, even in the middle of the day, as if the sun feared to show its face in the realm of death. The crows were still overhead, circling and wheeling amongst the prosecutors as they swooped above on wings of lightning. They had come into conflict with the deranged servants of the ruinous powers more than once since their arrival. The worshippers of the blood god were as thick as fleas in the crags around them. The realm of death was under siege, and every peak and valley was infested with the followers of the dark gods. Tarsus shook his head.
I'd not turn down any alliance, if it were offered.
A cry from above caught his attention, and Tarsus looked up. One of the prosecutors swooped low and pointed towards a rocky outcrop that rose abruptly from the surrounding landscape, towering over the bare trees.
Something ahead. A structure of some sort at the top.
Tarsus waved them forward, the winged warriors hurtling into the distance towards the dome-roofed ruin that occupied the summit of the tor.
Another ruin.
And perhaps a way into the underworld.
Tarsus raised his hammer, signaling to his retinues. His voice carried over the gleaming ranks of his warrior chamber.
Liberators to the flanks! Shields out!
His warriors obliged, in case there was an ambush in the offing. If it were the place they sought, it could be defended, and such a place might well provide refuge for warbands like ones that had relentlessly attacked them since their arrival. With a single gesture from Tarsus, shields raised over the heads of the Stormcasts and to the sides, transforming the storm host into a veritable serpent of Sigmarite. Their protection would allow them to weather arrows, rocks, and even sorcery as they moved. Satisfied, Tarsus swung his hammer towards the ruin.
Forward!
A wide path wound up around the outcrop. Tarsus led the way and saw that the path ahead was lined with skulls as he rounded the slope. mounted on spikes of brass and iron, the skulls twitched and champed yellow cracked teeth, as if in protestation of their fate. Bones were scattered below them, mixed with bits of rusty armor and broken weapons, and piled up in drifts alongside the path. Tarsus stared at the skulls, pity, warring and disgust.
They still live. Even now.
Ramus looked at the skulls.
No, Tarsus, they do not. But that is the horror of it. Nothing in this realm ever truly dies. Their souls are bound here in chains of magic of the darkest sort.
Tarsus shook his head and called over his shoulder.
Keep moving.
More bones awaited them at the summit of the tor. They were scattered and in piles, some whole, though most cracked and broken. Crows hopped among the heaps, cawing to one another. Everywhere, dolorous icons and foul standards, marked with sigils of murder and slaughter, had been stabbed into the rocky slope. Jawbones and finger bones hung from many of these, softly clattering in the breeze.
We are not the first to come here.
The structure crouched ahead of them, partially built into the massive fang-like crag of rock that topped the outcrop, and resembled nothing so much as a dome. Its walls curved outward in an immense semicircle from the crag, dominating the slope below despite the ragged gaps in their length. A curved roof surmounted the walls, crows circling it in great numbers. Vast symbols had been carved into the outer walls, symbols representing the sun, moon, stars, and other more esoteric shapes.
It's as large as any I've seen. Though in worse condition than most.
Despite the state of it, he could see that it had taken great skill to shape the stone. Sundials and dry fountains decorated the courtyard, and Tarsus thought it might once have been a beautiful place, before the occurrence of whatever evil had befallen it. As Tarsus studied it, he felt a pang of something. Sadness, perhaps? Or the twitch of some long-forgotten memory newly stirred, and his hands tightened on his weapons.
I have seen this place before.
Lord Celestin.
Tarsus shook his head, irritated.
Fine. This place. There is something about it.
Overhead, the prosecutors had dropped onto the dome, scattering the crows who croaked in agitation. The stormcasts moved into the ruins and through the remains of what had once been an outer wall, collapsed for many years into irregular piles of stones and shattered columns. Tarsus left several retinues of judicators and liberators on guard in the courtyard, and led the rest of his warriors into the ruin. More bones rooted them inside the gargantuan entrance hall, crushed, splintered, and scattered about at random. The entrance itself was composed of heavy stone slabs, marked by more symbols, suns and moons, comets and falling stars, all carefully carved into the rock face. Tarsus traced one of the latter with his fingers as he passed, wondering why it all seemed so familiar.
What was this place?
He gazed up at the faded mural that had been painted on the curve of the roof above, depicting a vast field of stars and a black-cloaked, scythe-wielding figure hard at work, reaping a cosmic crop. Ramus looked around.
An observatory, perhaps. There are places in the Nihiliad Mountains that this reminds me of. They were places of contemplation for stargazers and sky worshippers. Maybe this is one. This outcrop is the highest point in the Vale, a perfect place to watch the night sky.
Perhaps, but watch it for what? The stars in this realm are all askew, and the night sky is in upheaval.
It was not always so.
He gestured to the strange carvings that marked the walls. Tarsus thought they resembled the star fields depicted in the mural above.
I suspect that these are the patterns of the stars as they were before the coming of chaos.
As they could be again.
He pointed down the corridor with his hammer.
There. The central chamber.
He moved through the archway at the end of the hall and into the heart of the observatory. Despite its outward facade, the observatory was in reality merely a single immense room. The central chamber was massive, easily large enough to accommodate 100 men, with high vaulted ceilings that curved upward to meet in a central skylight of stone. Crows clustered about the circumference of the aperture, staring down at the stormcasts below. A massive dais occupied the center of the chamber, directly beneath the stone. Sloped, circular steps led upwards to an enormous wheel-like orrery, crafted from black iron and made in the shape of a sun. The orrery was larger than 3 men, and its colossal rings were spread outwards, so that the dull light from above streamed down through the holes in them, casting weird shadows upon the walls and floor of the chamber. Ramus gazed at the orrery.
4 stars. The holes in the iron correspond to the patterns on the walls. This used to be a place of study and contemplation.
He sounded almost wistful.
Now it is nothing save a curiosity.
As with the rocky slopes outside, the floor of the chamber was obscured by broken bones and scattered pieces of armor. All the walls were covered in faded murals and tenacious lichen, except one that was occupied solely by a basket-hilted sword wedged deep into the stone. Dead clumps of the lichen marked the floor beneath the blade, and the steel had turned cracked and powdery where it had touched the stone. Something about the blade bothered him. He felt a chill, though he could not say why.
We should go. I was wrong. There is nothing for us here.
Tarsus, wait. Look.
Tarsus turned towards the great dais and peered at the orrery. He blinked, startled. There was something caught in the rings. No, not caught, he realized. Trapped. He hadn't seen it before because it had been hidden by the rings, but now he could see it clearly. Quickly, he climbed the dais, Ramus 1 step behind him.
It's a man. Alive?
Around the dais, the storm casts spread throughout the chamber. Though they were wary, they were curious about this realm and all it held. Many of them, after all, might have stood in this very chamber in centuries past. They might even have died in its defense, or in defense of any one of the great and shattered citadels thrust up from the dry sod of these lands like scattered tombstones.
I don't think so.
The orrery moved, albeit very slowly, clicking and creaking along its runnel, and allowed the sunlight to flow through the holes in the iron. The man's body was held aloft by brass spikes, hammered through his wrists and into the curve of one of the orrery's rings, leaving him to dangle within a makeshift cage. Dried blood coated the marble flesh of his bare arms and head, staining the ornate armor he wore on his torso and legs. Wounds marked his arms and face. His armor, too, was marked, and by many weapons. A tattered crimson cloak was pooled on the ground at his feet, as if it had been ripped from him and then summarily discarded. The body stank of blood and death, and the aquiline features were slack. Something about the dead man's face held Tarsus's attention. It was not familiar, and yet was.
Were you there? That final battle when I proved my worth to Sigmar.
But how could that be? For that was centuries ago.
Help me move these rings.
Tarsus caught hold of the outer ring and began to push it back, so that the others folded into it. The metal squealed as rusted joints and hinges were propelled into motion.
We must release him. Whoever he was, no man deserves such a fate.
Ramus did not question, and together the 2 Stormcast Eternals managed to move the ancient mechanism so that the body was no longer trapped out of reach. Ramus caught hold of the dead man's jaw and looked to Tarsus.
These wounds on his flesh. The followers of the Blood God are known for their brutality to those taken in battle. Perhaps he had the ill luck to be taken alive. Come! Closer. And mayhap I shall tell you.
Tarsus drew his sword as the stink of old blood washed over them.
Ramus, beware!
The body twitched in its bonds. Metal scraped metal, and the battered head rose, eyes red and alight with a terrible need. Quicker than either Stormcast could react, the thing's feet suddenly slid up to brace against the curve of the ring, and the body lunged forward, held in check only by its thin wrists. It snapped long fangs together, just shy of Rames's face. The Lord Relictor stepped back, hammer ready, as the thing thrashed wildly, biting at the air in a frenzy. Around the dais, stormcasts snapped to attention, weapons raised. A retinue of decimators began to move towards the dais, axes ready to chop the creature apart. Tarsus waved them back.
Hold! Stand fast!
Whatever this thing was, he was confident that he and the Lord Relictor would be enough to handle it.
Enough!
Rames's hammer snapped out, catching the thing in the stomach and knocking it from its perch. It squalled as it fell, and the spikes tore its flesh. It dangled, shuddering, then coughed and looked up. The vulpine jaws sagged, and a bloody stink swept over Tarsus again. The red eyes faded to orange, then yellow, and the tension drained from the dangling shape.
Do forgive me. I'm not at my best.
Tarsus extended his hammer and used it to lift the creature's head.
What are you?
Even as he asked the question, he realized that he knew the answer. Vampire. The word was jostled loose from the depths of his memory. Had he encountered such creatures before in his previous life? Withered lips peeled back from long fangs, and the vampire gave a rattling laugh. What? Sunken and narrowed.
I smell storms and clean water. You are not mortal, then.
Not for a long time.
The same might be said of me, I suppose.
What is your name?
What use is a name when one is bound thus?
The creature twitched its thin fingers, causing the brass spikes to screech against the iron rim of the orrery. It winced in obvious pain.
If you release me, perhaps I shall tell you, eh? How curious are you?
Not enough to release a monster.
Tarsus lowered his hammer.
Vampires are not to be trusted. They lie as easily as other men breathe, and treachery festers in their veins.
Even as he spoke, he wondered where the words came from. They felt familiar on his tongue, as if he'd spoken them before. Hellstone. The word floated again to the surface of his mind.
Then kill me. I will be free of this place one way or another.
The creature peered at Tarsus, and then gave a harsh chuckle.
Unless you lack the fortitude to do so. Stormcast.
Tarsus's eyes narrowed. The old faded memories receded as suspicion flared. He traded a glance with Ramus, and then replied.
I thought you didn't know what we were.
Did I say that? I merely asked a question. The implications thereof were your creation.
He showed his fangs.
I know what you are well enough.
Why were you here? Speak plainly, or I will leave you for the carrion birds.
Tarsus gestured to the crows gathered above for emphasis.
Implying what? That if I answer truthfully, you'll free me.
Ramus looked at Tarsus.
Enough of this. We have wasted enough time here bandying words with a talkative corpse. Let us leave this place, Bullard.
He started down the steps. Tarsus turned to follow.
Wait! I was looking for something. A gateway into Styx.
The vampire smiled, though there was little humor in the expression.
I was looking for a way home.
His hands twitched, and the smile twisted into a snarl of pain.
Where is it? Why do you care?
We seek an audience with the great necromancer.
The vampire blinked.
With Nagash? Are you mad?
Tarsus frowned.
No. But we have a duty, and we will fulfill it, or die in the attempt.
Yes, one or the other is quite likely. Both, even more so.
The vampire shook his head.
Sounds right. You are mad. Leave me, madman. Let me.
Did you find the gate?
The vampire closed his eyes.
No. Before I could do so, I was set upon by a servant of the blood god calling himself the Woe Bringer.
warband cast down my servants and bound me here. They thought it amusing, given my nature, to imprison me inside a sun, black iron or otherwise.
Why not simply kill you?
The vampire's smile widened. How can you kill what is already dead? The smile faded. In truth, I think they took my durability as a challenge. Tarsus's eyes strayed to the many wounds that covered the vampire's exposed flesh and the blood that stained the dais.
They tortured you.
They are torturing me. Every few days. The sunlight, weak as it is, and the lack of blood, kept me dangling here. Prisoner, mindless brutes. I have no doubt you can count the Woebringer's foraging parties. He sends them out looking for worthy prey, while the rest of the warband wanders about these hills, fighting anyone and anything they come across, including others of their ilk. When that gets boring, he comes here and carves his name on my flesh. The vampire's eyes flashed with amusement. In fact, he's due any moment now, I'd say. One of the prosecutors called down from the dome above.
Lord Telephone, the enemy approaching. How many?
Inwardly, he cursed his inattention to priorities. He'd failed to send the prosecutors to scout the area around them, and now the enemy was almost upon them.
Twice our numbers. They're climbing the eastern slope and with Warbies.
Korgoraths. Ugly brutes and hard to kill. The Woebringer quite likes his pets. Don't some priests?
Then we shall make ready for them. Ramus, fortify this chamber for war. It is no keep, but it must do.
And what of you, Lord Celestin?
I wish to see the enemy's strength and dispositions for myself.
So there you have it, boys and girls and ladies and gents. The next part in the audio that I'm doing for Age of Stigma. There's another 2, another 3, 6, 7 and 8 in the next one, hopefully I'll do. Yeah, so thanks for joining me on this Sunday evening. I hope you had a fantastic weekend, and I hope your Monday goes alright tomorrow. Put any comments, likes, subscription, you know the score. Just put some comments, questions, whatever comments, because I'm just going to read them out anyway. Yeah, so thanks for joining me with this half an hour of Age of Stigma goodness, and I hope to see you very soon in the next video. So yes, hopefully this week I'll be getting some more painting done, some more videos done, and I've got a few commission bits to do, and loads of other stuff to do. And yes, so that's nearly the end of my lovely video. I hope you do like the audio. Please let me know, because I'll be quite happy to do a couple more when I'm doing 40k, if I'm doing 40k. It's a sneaky little secret thing going on. Yeah, so yeah, if you like to see some more audio stuff on my thing, then tell me, let me know in the comments below, and I will do it for you, not a problem. I'm quite happy to, because I quite enjoyed listening to it. I'll probably listen to the one that we're listening to at the moment for about 5 times now, I think it is. But I find them quite good, find them quite worth, you know, having a bit of time to myself while I'm painting. And yes, thoroughly enjoy them, and I've got a few, as you well know. So yes, as I said before, hope you've all had a good weekend, hope you all have a good week, painting wise, hobby wise, in your own lives, and stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye bye.